They were the most feared warriors on earth. The Mongols had conquered China, Korea, and most of Asia, but when Kublai Khan turned his armies toward Japan, history took a shocking turn. Twice the invincible Mongols tried to invade, and twice they were destroyed, not just by samurai, but by a force no army could control. This is the epic story of the invasions that gave birth to the legend of the Kamikaze, the divine wind. In the late 13th century, the unstoppable Mongol Empire, led by Kublai Khan, stretched from China to the Middle East. But when Kublai turned his sights on Japan, the island nation refused to bend to Mongol demands. What followed were two massive invasion attempts in 1274 and 1281, campaigns that brought together cutting-edge military technology, vast fleets, and some of the largest armies the medieval world had seen. The Mongol Empire, at its peak, was a force unlike any other in history. Its rapid expansion had brought vast swathes of Eurasia under a single rule, from the shores of the Pacific to the gates of Europe. Kublai Khan, grandson of the legendary Genghis Khan, had established himself as the great Khan and Emperor of China, founding the Yuan dynasty. His ambitions, however, did not stop at the continent's edge. Japan, an island nation that had long remained isolated from the tumultuous events on the mainland, suddenly found itself in the crosshairs of the world's most powerful empire. The Kamakura Shogunate, which ruled Japan at the time, faced an unprecedented threat. Led by the influential Hojo clan, the Japanese leadership made a fateful decision that would shape the course of their nation's history. When Kublai Khan's envoys arrived bearing demands for submission, the Japanese response was unequivocal. They refused to acknowledge Mongol suzerainty, a decision that was as bold as it was dangerous. This defiance set in motion a chain of events that would culminate in two of the largest naval invasions the world had ever seen. The first Mongol invasion fleet set sail in 1274. It was a formidable force, combining Mongol cavalry, Korean infantry, and Chinese sailors. The invasion force landed on the shores of Kyushu, Japan's southernmost main island, and initially met with success. The Japanese defenders, accustomed to ritualized combat between samurai, were unprepared for the Mongols' tactics and superior weaponry. However, as the invaders prepared to press their advantage, nature intervened. A powerful typhoon, later dubbed the Kamikaze, or divine wind, struck the Mongol fleet. Ships were smashed against the rocky coast, and thousands of soldiers drowned. The remnants of the invasion force hastily retreated, giving Japan an unexpected reprieve. The impact of these failed invasions on Japanese history and culture cannot be overstated. The concept of the kamikaze, the divine wind that saved Japan, became deeply ingrained in the national consciousness. It reinforced the belief in Japan's divine protection and would later be invoked during World War II in a very different context. The second invasion of 1281 marked a pivotal moment in the conflict between the Mongol Empire and Japan. Kublai Khan, undeterred by his previous failure, was resolute in his determination to conquer the island nation. In 1281, he orchestrated one of the most ambitious military campaigns in history, assembling a colossal fleet that would dwarf any naval force of its time. The sheer scale of this armada was staggering, boasting more than 140,000 soldiers and sailors, a testament to the Khan's unwavering commitment to his goal. The Mongol strategy for this invasion was as bold as it was complex. Kublai Khan devised a two-pronged assault, a masterful plan that would see two separate fleets converge on Japan from different directions. The first fleet, a formidable force in its own right, set sail from the Korean peninsula, carrying with it the weight of Mongol military might. Simultaneously, a second fleet embarked from the southern shores of China, creating a pincer movement that threatened to overwhelm the Japanese defenses from multiple angles. As news of the impending invasion reached Japan, the nation rallied to prepare its defenses. The Japanese, having learned valuable lessons from the first Mongol invasion attempt, were not caught off guard this time. With remarkable foresight and determination, they set about constructing extensive coastal fortifications. These defenses were designed to repel the Mongol forces at the shoreline, creating a formidable barrier against the invaders. The clash between the Mongol invaders and the Japanese defenders was nothing short of epic. As the Mongol ships approached the Japanese coast, they were met with fierce resistance. The Japanese fought with unparalleled bravery and tenacity, engaging the Mongols in a series of intense skirmishes along the coastline. These battles were characterized by their ferocity, with both sides displaying remarkable skill and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. For weeks, the conflict raged on, without a clear victor emerging. The Mongols, despite their superior numbers and advanced weaponry, found themselves struggling to break through the Japanese defenses. The coastal fortifications proved to be a significant obstacle, blunting the Mongol assault and preventing them from gaining a foothold on Japanese soil. The Japanese defenders, fighting for their homeland, showed incredible resilience, repelling wave after wave of Mongol attacks. As the stalemate continued, it seemed that the outcome of the invasion would be decided by sheer determination and endurance. The Mongols, frustrated by their inability to make significant progress, began to consider alternative strategies to overcome the Japanese defenses. Meanwhile, the Japanese, though successful in holding their ground, were acutely aware of the immense pressure they were under and the possibility that the Mongol forces might eventually break through. Just as the conflict reached a critical juncture, with both sides locked in a grueling battle of attrition, nature intervened in a way that would alter the course of history. In a twist of fate that seemed almost too extraordinary to be true, a massive typhoon began to form off the coast of Japan. This wasn't just any storm, it was a meteorological phenomenon of such immense power that it would come to be known as the Kamikaze, or divine wind. The typhoon struck with unimaginable fury, its winds howling across the sea and its waves rising to monstrous heights. The Mongol fleet, despite its size and strength, was utterly unprepared for the sheer force of this natural disaster. Ships that had been poised for invasion just hours before were now tossed about like toys in a giant's bathtub. The carefully planned formation of the Mongol armada disintegrated in the face of nature's wrath. As the storm raged on, the destruction it wrought upon the Mongol fleet was catastrophic. Thousands of ships, from small support vessels to large warships, were smashed to pieces by the relentless assault of wind and waves. The sea, which had been a highway for the Mongol invasion, now became a vast, watery grave for countless soldiers and sailors. Men who had set out to conquer found themselves fighting for their very survival against an enemy they could neither see nor combat. The scale of the disaster was almost beyond comprehension. Entire squadrons of ships vanished beneath the waves, taking with them the dreams of conquest that had driven the invasion. The beaches of Japan, which had been prepared for battle, instead became littered with the wreckage of the Mongol fleet and the bodies of those who had not survived the storm's fury. For the Japanese, the typhoon was seen as nothing short of divine intervention. The term kamikaze, which would later take on a different meaning in Japanese military history, originally referred to this storm that had saved Japan from invasion. It was viewed as a clear sign that the gods favored Japan and opposed the Mongol conquest. The aftermath of the typhoon marked a definitive end to Kublai Khan's ambitions of conquering Japan. The destruction of his fleet was so complete that any thought of regrouping or launching another invasion was out of the question. The Mongol Empire, which had seemed unstoppable in its expansion across Asia, had finally met an obstacle it could not overcome. For Japan, the failed invasion and the miraculous intervention of the Kamikaze became a cornerstone of national mythology. It reinforced the belief in Japan's divine protection and bolstered the nation's sense of invincibility. This event would be remembered and celebrated for centuries, shaping Japanese culture and identity in profound ways. The failed invasions of Japan by the Mongol Empire had far-reaching consequences for both nations, as well as for the broader course of military history. These events, which unfolded in the late 13th century, left an indelible mark on the cultural, political, and military landscapes of East Asia and beyond. For Japan, the successful defense against the Mongol invasions became a defining moment in its national identity. The victory served to reinforce the authority of the shogunate, solidifying its position as the dominant political and military force in the country. The Japanese people saw their triumph as a sign of divine intervention, giving rise to the concept of Kamikaze, or divine wind. This belief in supernatural protection would shape Japanese culture for centuries to come, influencing art, literature, and religious practices. The idea of the kamikaze took on particular significance during times of national crisis. It fostered a sense of invincibility and divine favor that would later be revived during World War II. In this modern context, the term was applied to suicide pilots who were tasked with crashing their aircraft into enemy ships. This extreme tactic drew upon the historical narrative of divine protection and sacrifice for the nation, demonstrating the enduring impact of the Mongol invasions on Japanese cultural memory. For the Mongol Empire, the failed attempts to conquer Japan marked a significant turning point in their expansionist ambitions. Despite their vast conquests across Asia and parts of Europe, the Mongols found themselves unable to overcome the combination of Japanese resistance and environmental factors that thwarted their invasion plans. This defeat effectively set the eastern limit of Mongol expansion, creating a psychological and physical barrier to further conquest in that direction. The repercussions of these failed invasions were felt even as the Mongols established the Yuan dynasty in China. Although they now controlled the mainland, the Mongols never again attempted to launch a full-scale invasion of Japan. This reluctance to revisit their earlier defeat speaks to the profound impact it had on Mongol military strategy and imperial ambitions. The island nation of Japan remained an elusive prize, forever beyond the reach of the once unstoppable Mongol war machine. In the realm of military history, the Mongol invasions of Japan stand out as a pivotal moment in the evolution of warfare. These campaigns represent one of the earliest recorded instances of gunpowder being used in combat on a significant scale. The Mongols, known for their adoption and adaptation of new technologies, brought with them explosive devices and primitive firearms that were largely unknown to their Japanese opponents. The use of these gunpowder weapons demonstrated both the strengths and weaknesses of Mongol military might. On one hand, it showcased their technological superiority and ability to innovate in warfare. The shock and awe of explosives and firearms gave the Mongols a psychological edge in many battles. However, the invasions also revealed the limitations of their military approach when faced with unfamiliar terrain and determined island defenders. The Japanese, for their part, learned valuable lessons from these encounters. They began to adapt their own military strategies and fortifications to counter the threat of future invasions. The experience gained in repelling the Mongols would influence Japanese military thinking for generations, contributing to the development of new tactics and technologies. Moreover, the Mongol invasions of Japan serve as a case study in the importance of naval power and the challenges of amphibious warfare. The Mongols, primarily a land-based empire, struggled with the logistics of transporting and supplying a large invasion force across the sea. Their difficulties in this regard highlight the specialized nature of naval operations and the unique obstacles faced by armies attempting to conquer island nations. In conclusion, the failed Mongol invasions of Japan had profound and lasting effects on both nations involved, as well as on the broader course of military history. For Japan, it was a moment of national triumph that shaped its cultural identity for centuries. For the Mongols, it marked the limits of their expansion and revealed vulnerabilities in their military approach. And for military historians, these events provide valuable insights into the early use of gunpowder in warfare and the complexities of naval invasions. The legacy of these failed conquests continues to resonate, offering lessons in strategy, technology, and the unpredictable nature of warfare that remain relevant to this day.